All right, well, welcome everybody. My name's Denis. I gave a bit of a talk last week and I'm going to be continuing for tonight and next week as well. So this is like an introductory talk on Buddhism, and also we'll do some more meditation this week. It was only, I think I talked too much last week and there was only a squeezed in meditation, but I particularly like to do the Buddha meditation tonight. And Geshe Doga, who's the resident teacher here at Tara Institute, particularly taught this Buddha meditation. And when I asked him about that the other day, he said, very good. Oh, thanks. Right, so I'm going to try and follow my script a little bit more tonight because I tend to lose track last time. But first of all, I just thought to say, you know, Christmas is only 2 weeks away and, you know, everybody's very busy, excitement's in the air, people are busy preparing, and it's just interesting, you know, it's such a joyous occasion, but then at the same time, for some people, it's a bit of a dread to see people that they might not want to see at Christmas, or long to see people that they want to see at Christmas that they can't, or not have anybody to see at Christmas. So it's actually a time of sadness. So it's interesting that Christmas brings all these things to different people. But I thought something that somebody said to me many years ago, you know, about Jesus Christ. And I find it really very true that this one human being, Son of God, whoever, demonstrated such unconditional love, unconditional kindness to others. And here we are, 2,500 years ago, we're still celebrating his birth. So it just shows the power that pure love and kindness can have. So it's a very, very powerful thing. And I just had a little exposure through my aunt to Christianity when I was growing up. But I really love the story about the prostitute, and she was about to be stoned to death. And Jesus said to them, "Let he who is not sin cast the first stone." And I just thought, wow, it's just such a, an open, profound appreciation of humanity and showing kindness equally to all. So anyway, those are the thoughts that just came to my mind. So what I would like to continue talking about tonight is about the precious human rebirth. I spoke a little bit about that last week, and it's something that we need to put some effort into thinking about, because if we don't, we will lose our opportunity. So I'll talk more about what is the opportunity that we have that we could lose, but we need to recognise it first of all. So, you know, I did refer you to this book last week, The Perfect Human Rebirth, written by Lama Rinpoche. I just can't believe that I haven't read this for so long. I've had it in my bookcase for so many years, and I thought I should read it, and I'm just taken back by it because it's so reminding of don't waste the opportunity. I'm 60, maybe I've got 20 more years life of good health, maybe not. Maybe tomorrow could be my last day, maybe tonight. No guarantee. But to have such a, as you understand if you were to read this book, haven't got time to talk about it in the same detail. Of course, Lama Zopa Rinpoche is who passed away 12 months ago, but he's such an incredible human being, talks with such depth of understanding. Then when you get a glimpse of that through reading this, you realise, my God, you know, I need to take advantage of this opportunity. So, you know, in the context of the precious human rebirth, first of all, we have to recognise the opportunity that we have. Then we need to recognise, okay, so what do I do with it? What's so special about it? And then the third main point about the precious human rebirth is how rare it is. Because if you appreciate how rare it is in terms of the causes to create, creating the causes to have a precious human rebirth are, very difficult causes to create. And I'm talking about past lives, because we've obtained a human life. There's 8 billion human beings on this earth, but we've obtained a human life, but a very special life that is rich in opportunity to follow the spiritual path. So that's what makes it so rich. And also it's extremely rare in terms of the numbers, and compared with the number of animals that there are in the world. There are other beings that in Buddhism are described, like hell realms and spirit realms and animal realms. Those 3 are collectively known as the lower realms. We don't want to be reborn in the lower realms. And then there's the upper realms, which is the human realm, and there's even described more godly realms, beyond the human realm. So Geshe Doga, who's a Tibetan Lama from Tibet, who's taught here for 40 years, sometimes in his talks he'll say, when death comes, there's only 2 possibilities. You are either born in the lower realm or you're born in the upper realm. And, that's one or the other. And which one it is, the upper or the lower realm, is completely dependent on our actions, no one else's actions. We're responsible for our behaviour and our actions of body, speech and mind. Primarily our mind, because however we think, whatever's going through our head motivates us to speak and express ourselves physically. So we are solely responsible for those actions. Those actions plant seeds on our mind stream, and they remain, and they will ripen in the future when the right situation and conditions come together. So that's what I'm sort of trying to give a bit of a background to, that when Geshe Doga says at the end of this life there's either the lower realms or the upper realms, it's completely dependent on us, because our actions will determine where we are in our next life. So interesting when you think about what we have at the moment. We are human beings, and the primary cause to be born as a human being, dependent on our actions alone from our previous life, is morality. Otherwise, the conditions wouldn't have come together for us to be born as a human being. I've got 3 dogs. Why are they dogs? Why am I a human being? Buddhism says that they have been reborn in the lower realms primarily because they lacked the practice of morality. So, okay, so that's all I'll say on that for a sec. Hang on. So I just wanted to read, since the time of the Buddha, there have been so many incredible practitioners and yogis and great Buddhist masters, lamas from Tibet, His Holiness the Dalai Lama. They all carry the same message about, first of all, recognise the precious opportunity you have. So I wanted to just read the quote from Shanty Dava, who was from the 8th century in India. And he wrote a book called A Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. And it's got 10 chapters in verse form, very inspiring. I mentioned it briefly last week. And I'll say a little bit more about Shanty Dava in a minute. But anyway, so for example, relying upon the boat of a human form, free yourself from the great river of pain. As it is hard to find this boat again, this is no time for sleep, you fool. So I find that this is Shanty Dava from the 8th century, a monk, a great yogi, reminding us that we can use this human form as a boat to carry us across, you know, the waters to the promised land, you know. But we're using our boat as a body to carry us across to be free from the cycle of birth and death, of samsara. Has anyone heard of the word samsara? I don't really like to throw in words that are sort of new, but I think I should, because it is a common term in Buddhism, very common. Who hasn't heard of the word samsara? Good, good, good. Okay. So another equivalent term for samsara, it's a Sanskrit term. It means cyclic existence. And cyclic existence essentially means being caught in the cycle of birth and death, throughout the various realms of existence that we as sentient beings can be reborn in, dependent on our actions. That's what determines whether we're going to be born in a human realm in our next life or in an animal realm in our next life. We are responsible. So that uncontrolled cycling throughout these realms is what's referred to as samsara. Buddhism is all about teaching. The Buddha taught the methods to be liberated from samsara. And, you know, at the... I'm going way off track, I'm really sorry. But, you know, at the very heart of samsara, just to mention, it's ignorance. The very heart that holds us in dissatisfaction and discontent and caught in the existence where we have to die and when we're reborn and experience suffering through life, or, you know, the very root cause of that nature is ignorance. And what allows us to be liberated from that is wisdom. So one of the most important things that's taught in Buddhism is ultimately to generate a great penetrative wisdom that allows us to see through that ignorance, to destroy that ignorance, so there's no longer a foundation for anger, for attachment, for jealousy, for pride, for competitiveness, all these things that motivate us to engage in harmful actions or harmful speech. So if we don't engage in those actions, we don't create the karma and the causes to experience the unpleasant result that comes from those actions. So when I read that verse, it says, relying upon the boat of a human form, free yourself from the great river of pain. That's talking about samsara, the nature of our existence. If you really look into it carefully, it is very much in the nature of suffering. That doesn't mean that we're not nice people, that we want to be happy. Of course we want to be happy. But if you actually really look at the core essence of it, there's a lot of suffering in life. And I always remember that when I went to India in the 1980s and listened to the Dalai Lama, and he said this body is like a receiver of pain. You know, that term, a receiver of pain. And it is. I'm not in pain at the moment. Not at all. I'm quite comfortable. But, you know, if I step on a sharp thorn, or if I have some, you know, a gallstone or something, the potential to experience great pain is there. So it's an underlying nature that we are subject to that sort of potential pain. So another verse by Shanty Dava is, so if, having found leisure such as this, I do not attune myself to what is wholesome, there could be no greater deception and there could be no greater folly. So this is also very, very relevant to the precious human rebirth. because having found leisure such as this, it's extremely rare to find leisure such as this human life. And, okay, so the precious human life is qualified by 8 freedoms and 10 endowments. This is in the formal Buddhist presentation in what's called the Lam Rim, the graduated path to enlightenment. And among those 8 freedoms and 10 endowments, essentially what it's saying is you have a life that has you've been born at a time where there are pure teachings of the Buddha, first of all. And then you're born at a time where you have good health and good faculties. You are able to think with clarity. You have your faculties about you. And more importantly, you have a mind that is inclined to want to follow a spiritual path. Because, you know, of the 8 billion people in this world, not everybody is particularly interested in following a spiritual path. There's a lot of people that are very motivated to look not beyond this life. Their motivation is totally about gaining wealth and securing their friends and reputation, building up their empire, whatever. I mean, we're all doing that in a certain way. We're all, you know, of course we want to have comforts. There's nothing wrong with needing to have a home and having food and all your resources and everything. But if the view needs to be broadened, because it's not just this life. It's something for us to think about. You know, if there's a life beyond this life. Buddhism certainly presents there is. I'd encourage you all to think about that, whether you think that's real or not, and if it is real, then if you're open to that idea, it opens up an awful lot. It means that there is a future, and when you combine that with the law of cause and effect, or karma, there are consequences from our actions in this life that we will experience in our future life. So the responsibility falls completely back onto us. Whereas in Christianity, of course, you know, it's the same thing. Absolutely, you need to live a good, wholesome life, because when you get to the pearly gates, you'll be judged on whether you're going to go to heaven or hell. It's a very similar concept, except Buddhism is more directly saying you are responsible for your actions. You know, we're in charge. And just one more that I would like to mention, which I only came across today, because when I first became interested in Buddhism, it was really through my contact to Geshe Dawa, who was the first Tibetan Lama to teach here at Tara Institute. And that was in the 1980s. And when he returned to India, Geshe Doga, the current teacher here at Tara Institute, here tonight, he took over, and he's been here for 40 years nearly now, and teaching with such incredible kindness and guiding us for nearly 40 years. It's just unbelievable. But anyway, when Geshe Dawa went back to India, he was requested to write some verses to summarise, you know, or any instructions that he would like to give to us. And one of them was very much along the line of this topic. And he says, thinking of the uncertainty of the time of death and energetically transforming the action of the 3 doors, which is body, speech and mind, into virtue is the main method of meaningfulness of fortune and leisure. Fortune and leisure is talking about the precious human rebirth. So hard to obtain. So it's exactly the same theme coming through. So I'm just trying to present it from the perspective that so many of the holy beings, of the great beings since the time of the Buddha, have emphasised this as well. So, what we all have in common is a wish for happiness and a wish to not experience anything unpleasant. You know, it's our fundamental nature. Everybody shares that. Every animal shares that. Every sentient being shares that same fundamental nature. And we're all following the best methods we can to achieve that. Otherwise, I mean, that's what motivates us to do anything. We're thinking it's bringing us closer to some sense of satisfaction or happiness. So, the point I wanted to make really was the Buddhist also said that what is in common with all sentient beings is that we carry the seed of potential to be fully awakened. So at the moment we have a dormant seed in our mind. We have a potential that we haven't yet developed. And that's called Buddha nature, and the potential to fully ripen that into our own inner spiritual development. You know, if you can think about, we have the seed of love, we have the seed of compassion, we know that. We have the seed of forgiveness, and we have levels of wisdom, but all of those can be developed further. So if you think about them being developed further, they can be developed further and further and further to the fullest development, which is the state of enlightenment. So all beings have that potential. However, it's really only in such a human rebirth that we have that we can utilise that opportunity. Because an animal can't meditate. My dog can't meditate. I can't teach my dog anything about of any depth apart from how to fetch the ball or, you know, where to sleep. Whereas as human beings we have this discriminating wisdom that allows us to investigate. So, okay. I might just say, has anybody got any questions at this point? Because we're going to go into a meditation shortly, and I haven't covered nearly anywhere where I wanted to cover, so I'm probably raving on again. One thing that did come to mind was the Buddha at one time scratched the earth with his finger and showed to one of his disciples, you know, the amount of dirt under his fingernail. He said, this is the amount, the number of beings that have obtained a precious human rebirth. The earth is the rest. So, you know, that's incredibly rare. So that suggests that the number of sentient beings are just vast, and only such a small number have obtained such an opportunity, which is us. We have obtained that. And there's also another very good analogy that the Buddha gave on the rarity of the human rebirth. That if you can imagine a turtle that lives in the ocean, that only surfaces once every 100 years, and that the turtle is blind. And that on the surface of the earth, there's a lot of wind, a lot of waves, and on the surface of the vast ocean is a small little ring, a golden ring, that's floating on the surface of the earth, on the surface of the water. And once every 100 years, that blind turtle comes from the bottom to the top and puts its head through the surface. If he was to put his head through the ring that's floating on the surface of the top of the water, that's an example of how rare it would be to obtain a precious human rebirth. So, you know, most unlikely. Chances aren't very high. So that was an example of the rarity of obtaining a precious human rebirth. All right, so I think we should do our meditation now, which is going to be a Buddha meditation. So if everybody can just sit comfortably, the most important thing is to have a straight back. And the reason for that is that the energy flows, the energy channels within the body run parallel with the spine. So if you have a straight back, it tends to support having good concentration and will help with your meditation. So sit with your legs crossed if you can, otherwise it's fine on a chair. And then your right hand sits on top of the left hand, thumbs together, resting in your lap, pointing towards your navel. And then your arms are slightly away from the body, just to support circulation. Your head's tilted slightly forward. Your eyes are focused along the nose, gently focused on the tip of the nose. Your tongue's resting on the palate. Your teeth are not clenched, very relaxed. So we're going to do a few rounds of focusing our attention on the breath. Counting as one, each inhalation and exhalation. So just focusing on that sensation as the air comes past the nostrils. So we'll do 7 rounds of that. If your mind wanders off, just bring it back and focus on the breath. So I'm going to lead the Buddha meditation, and I'll read a little bit, but as I read, you can do your visualization as best you can. So you can visualize either above your crown or in the space in front of you at the eye level, maybe a body length away, a large golden throne adorned with precious jewels, and supported by 4 pairs of vibrant white snow lions. These 4 pairs of lions represent the fearlessness the Buddha has. He has no fear with respect to having abandoned all his negativities. He has no fear with respect to having accumulated all virtue and all goodness. He has no fear with respect to teaching others what needs to be followed. And he has overcome all fear of not understanding all that is to be known. Above this throne, visualize a lotus, similar to the Buddha statue behind or in front of you. A white lotus, a lotus flower. Sometimes they say visualize 1,000 petals, but just a lotus. And upon this rests a flat disc, a flat moon disc. And upon this, a white sun disc, just like two plates on top of each other. And upon this sits Guru Shakyamuni Buddha, golden in colour, blazing with light. The Buddha looks upon you smilingly and lovingly. The lotus petal represents that the Buddha has renounced all of cyclic existence. And the moon disc represents that his heart is full of love and compassion and dedicated wholly for the benefit of others. The sun disc represents the vast wisdom that understands all that is to be known. He's seated in the full lotus posture. His left hand cradles a begging bowl full of nectar. His right hand, resting on his knee, touches the ground. Feel his presence. Feel his warmth and his wish to benefit you. Just in your own thoughts, request to the Buddha, please guide me. Please help me to go beyond confusion. Please give me strength. Please lead me along the true path. So visualize at this point that light rays beam from the heart of the Buddha and pour through your crown, completely fill your body with golden light. All your anxieties fall away. All your unhappiness dissolves. You become light, full of love. Your mind becomes very clear. And now visualize that the Buddha on your crown or in front of you dissolves into light and actually sinks into your crown, sinks through your crown, comes down to your heart, and you actually become inseparable from the Buddha. Feel that you become one. You feel the spaciousness, like an emptiness. And we spoke before about the Buddha nature, that all beings, all sentient beings have this Buddha nature. So then, from this sense of spaciousness, you yourself arise in the form of the Buddha. You visualize yourself as the Buddha. You have reached your fullest potential. You're golden in colour. You're seated in the full lotus posture upon a lotus moon and sun disk. You hold a begging bowl filled with nectar. Your right hand rests on your knee, touching the ground. Golden light radiates from you out to the 10 directions, reaching every sentient being. Start with the people closest to you, your family, your friends, people you know, people in this country, people in the world, the troubles of the world. The light reaches everywhere. Everyone that is touched by this light is transformed into a state of great peace. And they are also completely developed into their own highest potentials. And the meditation ends with a sense of rejoice. Feel that you have helped all sentient beings achieve a state of lasting peace, and rejoice in that. All right, so maybe we'll finish with that. So you can do this at home, simpler visualization, and just feel that that light and nectar pours into you and fills you. How did people find that? Enjoy that? So the symbolism is very rich too. You know, the Buddha holds the begging bowl here and his right hand is like that. And this symbolises, as you can see in the Buddha here, this symbolises that he's overcome what's called the 4 demons. The nectar, the 3 types of nectar in the bowl represent he's overcome the demon of death and the demon of delusions and the demon of the aggregates that's basically being tied to this sort of form that's subject to the pain and the experiences that we can potentially experience. And this right hand represents having overcome all external negative forces. So that's the representation of the overcoming the four demons, it says. So, has anyone got any questions? Otherwise I might keep going because I didn't quite finish a lot of the things that I wanted to say. But have I challenged anybody with anything I've said tonight that you want to challenge back or clarify? Hi. Precious human rebirth. Yeah. Any what, sorry? No. No. Well, that's right. Sorry, could you... I'm just complete... Well, that's right. It's very much described in that way. Because if you think that to fully appreciate the precious human rebirth, you have to appreciate past lives and future lives, and that we've been caught within that cycle. Basically, Buddhism says, since beginningless time. So there's been no beginning to being caught in this round of birth and death. And the causes to obtain a human rebirth, such that we have obtained, where we have an opportunity to contemplate, to meditate, to meet authentic teachers, and to follow a path, that there is such a path. Often people don't even hear that there is a spiritual path to follow, but there is a path. We can develop internally to our fullest potential. That potential is there. So all of those circumstances coming together are extremely rare. Most people don't think about that. And life comes and goes, and people leave this life and perhaps haven't extracted anything of real essence through their life. That's the potential. So I mentioned previously the primary cause to be born as a human is the practice of morality. So what does that mean that we can relate to, that we can take away? That's observing our actions of body, speech and mind. And there are 3 non-virtuous... We need to avoid the non-virtuous actions of body, speech and mind and practice the virtuous actions of body, speech and mind. So the 3 non-virtues of body, speech and mind, of body, are killing, stealing and lying. We need to abandon those. And the 4 of speech, harsh speech, lying, gossip or divisive speech. And the 3 of mind are having hatred, having attachment and holding wrong views. So these 10 actions have negative consequences, and by avoiding them, the primary cause for obtaining a human life is practicing those 10 virtuous actions. So avoiding killing, avoiding stealing, avoiding sexual misconduct. These are all very reasonable things that a moral life, we all recognise what a moral life is. And these are the guidelines for living a moral life. There's also people who are ordained and they observe vows and live their life according to those vows. There's also lay people that take vows not to kill, not to steal, these things. So they're also part of the practice of morality. So, I don't know if I've answered your question to your satisfaction. Don't know. Any more questions? Okay, so the important thing to remember, of course, is that we need to use our own discriminating wisdom and not just accept what you hear, because ultimately, you know, you have to believe in what you believe. So, you know, the Buddha himself said, because after 40 years of teaching, he'd developed a great reputation as being a great teacher, and he told his students, don't believe what I say just because I'm the Buddha. You need to check out what I'm saying like a gold merchant checks when he's buying gold. You know, you're not going to buy gold from somebody until you've really rubbed it, cut it, burnt it, made sure that it is real gold, really authentic gold, and only then will you actually adopt it, buy it. So in a similar way, when it comes to spiritual path and what you choose to adopt or not has to be checked out by you. You know, it's very important. And I was fortunate enough to be at the Rod Laver Arena when the Dalai Lama came to Australia. He's been here quite a few times. One particular time, I took my parents along and my wife, and it was wonderful. But, you know, at the end he said, if you don't, you know, don't agree with anything I've said, if it doesn't resonate with you, forget it and don't worry about it. So I think that's a very special thing about Buddhism, that there is no, there's no push. It's about your investigation and conviction, because it's your practice that's going to carry you through wherever you want to go. You know, if the conviction's not there, then you're not going to do anything. And that's why I find this particular topic, the precious human rebirth, so important, because I would hate to lose an opportunity if there was one that could be had and it just goes. Because Lama Zopa talks about, you know, if somebody had won Tats Lotto and never bothered to cash the ticket in, then, you know, that potential use on a very worldly level is lost. So there was potential, but it wasn't used. So the... okay, so I'll talk a bit more then. We've got 10 minutes. I'm talking about morality. So we've attained a human rebirth now in our next life, which is coming. And we've been fortunate enough to be born human. We don't want to be born without resources. There's many people in this world that you see are struggling terribly They're poor, they're terribly poor. People die of starvation. So the cause for having resources in your next life is the practice of generosity. So we need to ensure that we create the causes in our next life to have resources. So be generous. I mean, generosity is not given with, I'm giving because I'm getting. You're giving freely and wholly, practicing generosity. But the consequence of generosity is that you will have resources in your next life. Then you want to be associated with good companions and have good friends. The cause for that is the practice of patience. We need to observe patience in our life, and that's said to be one of the particular results, the karmic results in our future. And, you know, the other thing is we want to be able to achieve success in what we do in our life. You know, we want to be able to complete things, and the practice of enthusiastic perseverance is said to be one of the causes for being able to achieve and complete things successfully. And we don't want to have a distracted mind. We want to be able to focus and think clearly. And the cause for that is the practice of concentration. So what I'm listing is what's called the 6 perfections. And the 6 perfections are very important to be practiced because they have results that we wish to have. And finally, we want to have a clear mind and being able to discriminate and to decide what's right and wrong, what action should I adopt and what should I abandon. And that is through the practice of wisdom in our life. And there's various meditations to cultivate wisdom that we can follow. So that is very important. Okay, so I might just finish with a story, talking a lot about samsara and reincarnation and things like that. So Lama Zopa actually came to Tara Institute in this Gompa and taught this particular story. And so I wanted to just relay it in a very brief way. So at the time of the Buddha, so we're talking 2,500 years ago, whenever, one of his main disciples was Ananda. And Ananda came across a scene where there was a man holding a baby, cooking a fish on a barbecue, and kicking a dog to get away from that fish. And Ananda was said to have clairvoyance, and he was able to see things, you know, that ordinary beings can't see. So he looked upon this scene and he recognised that the dog that he was kicking was that man's mother from who had died and was reborn as a dog, because it said that she was so attached to her household or her house. I'm not sure of the exact karmic cause of why that resulted in her being reborn as a dog. However, she was reborn as a dog. And the man's father was a very keen fisherman, and he used to fish in the pond at the back of their property. And the consequence of that act of killing, he was reborn as a fish. And so, and this man that was sitting there, there was somebody who was infatuated with his wife, and that particular person died, and he was reborn as the baby that he was now holding. So Ananda came across this scene and just commented how how bizarre it is to think that here is this man holding the baby of the man who he disliked so much, kicking the dog who was his mother, eating the fish who was his father. So I just thought it's an interesting thing about reincarnation and our relationships with people and animals. We don't know what our relationships were in the past. So it's a very interesting one. I've got 3 dogs. Wonder who they were. I don't know. You know, it doesn't really matter who they were. The thing is, they have been reborn in a lower realm, so their actions determine that. But it would be interesting. It's a bit like this scene that Ananda came across. If you had the ability to see, then how it's almost a bit comical that it could happen like that. So, yeah. So I do want to mention that, see this photo or this picture there on the right hand side of this Lama Tsongkhapa statue? That's Lama Yeshi. He's a Tibetan Lama that founded the FPMT, which is the Foundation for the Preservation of the Mahayana tradition. Basically, it's bringing Tibetan Buddhism to the West. And he and Lama Zopa Rinpoche on the left, the two of them from the 1970s, mid-1970s, taught in the West and established various Buddhist centres throughout the world under the name of the FPMT, Foundation for the Preservation of Mahayana Tradition. And anyway, there's many of them. There's 200 or 300. Oh, I'm sure there's more, I don't know. There's so many in America. This centre is an FPMT centre. They're all throughout the world, where there are now teachers teaching the pure lineage of Buddhism. And this was all introduced because of Lama Yeshi and Lama Zopa Rinpoche at the suggestion of the Dalai Lama. So Lama Yeshi died in 1984 as a young man. I think he was only 49. He had a heart attack and was very sad, and he was loved throughout the world incredibly. And he made Buddhism available to the West. And anyway, so he was reborn as a Spanish man. And he was initially recognised by the Dalai Lama as 3 or 4 year old boy, because Lama Zopa Rinpoche searched the world, or they make observations. This is a tradition that's been in Tibet for a long time. Like the Dalai Lama is the 14th Dalai Lama, the 14th reincarnation of that same mind stream. And so there are ways beyond ordinary understanding of how they're able to see that this boy, not that boy, this girl, not that girl, this boy is the reincarnation of that person. This is a very, very reliable and has been going on for centuries, such a thing. And anyway, so His Holiness the Dalai Lama recognised this boy and said, this is the reincarnation of Lama Yeshi. So he was ordained. He was a monk at Sera Monastery in India for a number of years. And then when he got older, he decided that he didn't want to be a monk. So he's now married, he's got a child, he travels the world now, he teaches Buddhism throughout the world. He'll be here Thursday. So if you're free Thursday night, come along. If nothing more, just out of interest. And he's not your traditional Tibetan Lama. He doesn't like to be called anyone special. And his passion about the environment, his driving planting of trees and throughout the world, and he's also, teaching about the principles of Buddhism to the various places where he's invited. So he'll be doing a 4-day course up in Bendigo over December, and this only just came up the other day that he'd actually be coming here on Thursday night. So come along if you can. I'm coming for sure. Sorry? It'll be 8 o'clock. there's already about 100 people that have booked to come, and if you want a seat, then I would ring the office. If you have to sit on a seat, ring the office and they'll try and reserve a seat for you. Otherwise it'll be cushions all on the floor. But that should be interesting. The last time Lama Ossel was here was in this Gompa, and he was riding on his little tricycle bike when he was a 3-year-old boy going around this throne. That's the photo of him right there. There he is. So, all right, so if there's no questions, please stay for a cup of tea. I hope I haven't overwhelmed you with too much information. I tend to go on a bit too much, I think. But they're difficult concepts. But anyway, they're worth thinking about. And again, I really recommend photograph the book if you're interested. It's a free book. Well, you can get it free from, you can get a free PDF, I think, but there's 3 copies in the bookshop at the moment as well. So, all right, well, thank you very much, and I'll be back again next Monday. Thanks.